Yeah, I was doing a little bit of recap and reviewing, like some of what Lindsey Williams' predictions were. And I don't totally discount what anybody says. I think I said I think Lindsey Williams is getting thrown some wingers in there with this new guy he's getting information from, but it's not all BS. It's a mixture. So I listen to everybody, to tell you the truth, and it's like if somebody got something to say, sometimes even if it's incorrect, they might be revealing something else somewhere else, and so I get curious about, what you can turn up, what can turn up. So, but I want to review a couple things from going back when Lindsey Williams said. And I put him down. I write him down on a spreadsheet, just like a simple little notepad thing. I put it in there. Don't use a paper and pencil, but they're typed down. I listen to what he says, and like going back to say 10/10, October 10th, 2011. This was when he was on Pastor Butch Powell per Lindsey Williams, and this is my notes, but he goes like, the first one here I found pretty interesting. Because here we got, this looked like a dud, big time. I know you might say he's bullshit, but it's a mixture. Some people have more faith in him than other people. Some people think I kind of think it's part true. That's what I'm saying. But this looked like it was a dud. 2012 will be the most startling, unusual, eventful year in 2,000 years. So we got less than 2 months to go. I don't know what the hell happened now. Was that crazy? New York City got flooded just recently. Pretty bad, historical proportions, but I don't know if that means it's the most startling, unusual, eventful year in 2,000 years. 2,000 years, Genghis Khan, kinds of garbage, Attila the Hun. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff. The bubonic plague, World War II, World War One. I mean, 100 Years War between England and France and stuff, whatever. The 3 Punic Wars with Hannibal. I don't know what happened this year that beats all that stuff. Nothing. So kind of blew that one anyway. The elite have been intentionally putting out misleading information. So yeah, I think Miss Lindsey Williams is getting a couple wingers in there, but I don't discount everything he says. I know. 1 point, gasoline prices will rise like a rocket. This is for 2012, so so far they haven't. That could have happened if we had a war with Iran. I think that everybody knows that. As soon as they start a war with Iran, gasoline's going to go on the WTI at least $120 a barrel inside of overnight. It's going to go ballistic. The elite were about 3 months behind in overthrowing leaders in the Middle Eastern nations due to resistance from Gaddafi. Well, whatever. And he went on with his private fortunes will be lost in 2012 if they're secured with paper. Now this, I think, some private fortunes are going to be lost in paper and other private fortunes are going to be going way to hell up in paper. It ain't going to just be, paper dollars, but I mean, if you're in tips, Treasury, inflation protected securities, and everything just goes ballistic with inflation, you're going to make out like a fat rat. Okay? So there are financial instruments out there that will secure your wealth that are in paper because they're backed by other things, that are backed by real things. But I guess that might be somewhat true because, Mark Faber's in physical gold, over 25% physical gold, and his horse sense is beyond belief. Then he talked about the currency devaluation that's going to happen this year, 2012, to the point that food will be extremely expensive. So far that didn't happen, but I'm going to kind of digress here real. This is off of Google. I just did a search, cliff high collapse. He's talking this is cliff high. I know, and my opinion on cliff high is not too great. I know a lot of people really listen to web bots and stuff. I don't know. I can't figure those out. I used to listen to Jay Snipe. He used to translate them pretty good. Of course, when I read the web bops, I was like, what are you talking about? The space fart monkeys and all this other garbage, crazy terminology we'd throw in there. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, this is crazy. It kind of reminded me of Nostradamus. When you read the actual prose that he wrote, I'm like, I can't figure out what the hell he's talking about. Just tell me that the King of England is going to get killed on such and such a date, then I'll believe you. But it's always like with riddles. But anyway, He says total collapse between, but this is not a web bot thing. This is like he'll state, and there's all these videos out here. You can watch them on YouTube, right? I watched one of them right here, or some crap, whatever. But total collapse December 20th, December 2012, between that day and June 2013. That's what Cliff High's predicting. That's also what the Max Kaiser saying April 2013. Now, a lot of other people, the real people like Jim Rogers, Mark Farber, and Barnhart, we'll throw her in here too, even though she's not the same caliber, but they're predicting some kind of major collapse. But that's bullish for gold. The dollar goes down to toilet. Well, it's not going to go to toilet paper, but if they downgrade the debt, which this imminent fiscal collapse thing might bring about downgraded debt if they start breaking the mandatory rules and breaking the budgets and stuff. I kind of figure they are, right? Since when can Congress not spend money, right? They're going to downgrade the debt, which will be bullish for gold. So I expect a run-up in the metals pretty soon. And it may be like right now, for all I know. It may be right after this election, or it might be December, but it's not far off around the corner. Now, when this runs up, we got all this stuff out here, all these people like Cliff High and Max Kaiser and stuff talking about imminent collapse, and they're not in the same category as like Mark Farber. They're going to be telling you like collapse, and it probably ain't going to be for at least 2 or 3 years, maybe. I don't know, but I'm going to guess that I'm going to sell some of my junk if it goes up a lot. Not all of it, but some of it. But Lindsey Williams says debt before collapse. Silver going to $75 to $100, then a new currency. So this is basically a review of what the hell he was talking about. But I also want to point out, here's the major price point predictions of silver. Lindsey Williams actually has the most sane one out there. $75 to $100 per ounce, then a new currency. Max Kaiser, $400 an ounce. Now, this is not so crazy, actually, this even $400 an ounce, because if you look in 1979, how high, if you just take the inflation rate, the standard inflation rate, the real one, not the government one, but nothing like really exaggerated, but like a real one, just using like the government inflation rate the way it used to be calculated, if silver went up to like almost $50 an ounce, today that would be about $400. From the 1979 high, the way it went up like that and spiked, it's not that crazy, so, but it can come down too. Chapman was talking $500 an ounce. Big Swear, he's crazy. I'll just say that. He'll say $1,000 an ounce. Now that could be in inflation, but he'll say real dollars. That's anybody who tells you, like, if this is $400 or $500 an ounce, gasoline might be $20 a gallon, if it's $400 an ounce silver. That's why you'd want to keep your silver, because it's like you're going to be sunk. No matter how much fiat cash you have on hand, you're going to be sunk. So basically, I'm telling you the same old bullshit line that you've been hearing from all the silver bloggers, but basically they're right. You don't know when this is going to happen. It's almost like, what Jesus says about with the line he says, how you're never going to know. He's going to come back like a thief in the night. Well, that's what's going to happen when the dollar collapses. You ain't going to know. It's going to happen real fast. You're screwed. But I'm going to play around with some of it, though. Some of it, because I don't think it's going to happen just yet. And I think there's going to be a lot of emotional garbage going on here coming up pretty soon. Because I think this fiscal cliff, or the anticipation of it, is going to start driving up gold and silver and all the metals, because people, especially the two precious metals like that are very common, gold and silver, because the investors are going to start moving into them. And they're going to get too far ahead. And there's going to be all this, the collapse is here, and it probably ain't going to collapse just yet, And I'm hoping to sell it at a peak and buy some back at a low. That's my game, I don't know if I'm going to get it right, but if you want to follow my logic, I'm trying to brainstorm here, because it's a lot of times somebody gives me a good point, and then I'll run with that too, and I'll research further. The other thing is, he talked about the elite have a campaign of fear. Yeah, I agree with that big time. And a lot of times the fear comes from the middle class themselves, because sometimes they just work themselves up into a fear too. But you should always prepare. Hurricane Sandy has taught us what a catastrophe, how fast a catastrophe can come upon us. And even all the people that knew what was going on, I mean, all the weather people told you ahead of time this was going to be the Frankenstorm. I thought they were bullshitting around and exaggerating, you too. I mean, I thought they were exaggerating and scaring the crap out of people, but they turned out to be right. But see, in my case, personally, I'll prepare for anything at any time anyway. Like Florida has storms and hurricanes and junk. I'm ready for them as best I can. Maybe I'm not 100% ready all the way, but I did everything I could think of ahead of time. So, if there's a collapse of the economy, I should be okay for quite some time. Oh yeah, this is an interesting line here. The elite are in discord. In many cases, they hate each other but work together. That, I could tell you, is bona fide correct, 110%. Well, let me put it this way. I've been around some people, and the only thing I pick up on is, man, they're smooth, and they got fat-ass egos. Big time. It's like they enjoy life and have interest in things, but there's a devil down there, big time, man, big time. They are devils. I could probably, I don't want to say, but I'm using my senses. That's what I'm saying. But I've been around some of these people, and they're all right though. Maybe I'm a devil too, because you don't want to know what I think sometimes. But anyway, it's like when I need strength, I just call the demons in the deep, and they help me. That's what I say. How's that? So maybe I ain't a Christian. Who knows? But anyway, this was something else that Lindsey Williams said a couple months later in 2011, late 2011, predicting about 2012. And this was all going back. This is bona fide information because he was basically quoting out of Ben Bernanke's speech in 2002. And I pulled this up off of Wikipedia and I read it, and it's standard information. In other words, Lindsey Williams wasn't really telling you any kind of inside scoop if you didn't research it, but it was still good to listen to because it was accurate and it was backed up by Ben Bernanke's speech in 2002. Basically, it was bring interest rates to zero. That was correct. He did that. Buy securities from banks to expand the Federal Reserve balance sheet, and he's continuing to do that, right? Increase the money supply. He's continuing to do that, but all the money's being held by the banks, right? The cash is being held by the banks. Buy U.S. debt, QE1, 2, and 3, etc. So we're in QE3 going ad infinitum. The last one is devalue the dollar. Now, if you look several months ago, maybe not so much on YouTube, but there was a lot of predictions about what China's going to do. And basically, they're going to have to appreciate the yuan. And, that's where a lot of people were saying, but what that means, ergo, the dollar is going to be devalued greatly by the end of 2012. Yeah, I know. It's like we're almost here at the end of 2012. But, somehow, I think all this stuff is still in place. 100% solid. The way, the logic that's being played out. That China is going to appreciate its yuan. Strengthen its yuan. And they're going to be coming out, just like Lindsey Williams said. There's to be talk of currency wars and all this kind of crap. But it's not really going to be that. It's that the dollar is falling apart. So, I'm going to say this. I showed these predictions about price points on silver. I don't know exactly when they're going to happen, but even this $1,000 an ounce is possible if there's enough inflation. Because at one point in time, things are going to fall apart fast. They will. It's like, do we know exactly when? No. Sometimes they have a tendency to last a lot longer, but they catch you by surprise when they do fall apart. And the example is, what happened in the NASDAQ, all this kind of stuff. What happened in the real estate bubble, and the next thing is probably going to be what's going to happen, maybe with the U.S. dollar itself. It'll take you by surprise. It always takes people by surprise. So, but I'm thinking that this next time it happens, though, coming up here, I'm thinking that the precious metals are actually going to start taking off here pretty soon, hard, and it may not be the dollar collapse just yet. So, like I said, I'm going to play a little game with some of my stuff sell it off if it's like at record highs, some of it, and wait. But I think the final collapse is not as far off as you think. And you know, some of this is actually because everybody was thinking it was very close, maybe last year or the year before. But now everybody's thinking it's 2 or 3 years away. You know, they're all telling you that. So sometimes what I realize is like when everybody's like, you know, what I was saying before about Sam Zell's words of wisdom, when everybody's looking right, look left. So maybe the collapse is a lot quicker than you think. But I don't think it's going to be in early 2013. But that may be a signal when there's going to be another spike in the metals, and then followed by a pullback. But you know, I'm only selling dependent upon. I'll sell in small steps, depending on how high it goes. The higher up it goes, I'll sell a little bit more, but I'm still keeping the vast majority of it because I think probably the actual collapse might just be a couple years down the road. And if you don't have silver and gold, you know, this prediction what Lindsey Williams says about paper assets, it's not going to be all paper assets going to go to toilet paper. But if you don't have silver and gold, you know, if silver and gold are going up a lot, you might be having $20 a gallon gasoline, you know, and $10 a loaf of bread. And, you know, maybe that's where you're going to see your $200 silver or whatever it is. I don't know if the 400 is going to come into play, but it could, you know, like those numbers with the 400 or 500, that might be something where it gets to that price over a week, you know, or a couple months or something. It might be a very small window that occurs. So, I mean, I'm guessing shooting from the hip, but, you know, I'm not exactly guessing shooting from the hip because I could display the numbers and say the sales pitch, but it's like I thought about this a great deal, and I think that you got to weigh the situation and counterbalance it with everything that's going on. So it's my opinion that silver's going to probably take off here again pretty hard and not crash. And from there, you know, after it reaches another new all-time high, it's probably going to crash again a little bit, not like severely like the 26, but we probably aren't that far off from the U.S. dollar crashing. Maybe it's only a couple years away, and that's a pretty short time. That's not far off.